Hey guys, Dr. Justin, Strive to Move, and today we're going to talk a little bit about a shin splint. Very common in the running community or distance athlete community, and I just want to give a little bit more explanation as to what it actually means. So, the first thing we're talking about is the muscle affected in a shin splint. So essentially, it's the muscle that is right behind your shin bone, which is called the tibialis posterior. So your main shin bone is the tibia bone, which sits right in the front. And the tibialis posterior, it's pretty easy. It's exactly what it says. It's the muscle that sits directly behind the tibia bone. So it sits right along this line here, hence tibialis posterior. Now, the reason why I wrote stress fracture here is because stress fracture, which a lot of us have heard of, which is essentially it's a fracture in the bone, is the worst case scenario of a shin splint. So when a shin splint starts, it's just a shin splint. The bone is not affected. It's a muscle tightness issue. When it gets bad enough, it can be so bad that it actually creates a fracture on the bone. Let me just give you a quick tutorial about how that actually works. So the tibialis posterior essentially sits on the tibia bone. Now, as this muscle gets really tight or dysfunctional, it starts to get so tight it almost starts to pull onto the bone or off of the bone. If it pulls too much, the bone fractures. If it doesn't pull that much, but you still have an issue, it's a shin splint. So, how do we go about treating this? There's many different ways, and there might be one or two or all the methods needed to treat it, but let me just show you a couple. The first thing is we want to figure out why. Now, this is the biggest thing in my practice, is to figure out why it happens. We put you through a full movement evaluation so that we can actually see what's happening and how this all started. Now, once we figure that out, there's a couple different options that we can go with. The first thing is we might have to get that tibialis posterior muscle to loosen up and treat that tissue, the dysfunction within that tissue. So that might require manual treatment with my fingers or an instrument to start to get that muscle to loosen up. The next thing that we might do is give you some mobility or stretching for that muscle or your calf or something else. The next thing is to add strength. So that could be strength in the actual foot or ankle area. It could be strength in your glutes. We won't know that until we evaluate you. And again, everyone that comes in with a shin splint might get a different treatment. Okay. Finally, we could use tape. Now, the taping is pretty, it makes sense once you do it, but people have probably seen brands like Rock Tape, and why this helps. Now, we talked about before, as the tibialis posterior starts to pull off the bone, it almost gives this pulling effect like it's pulling it away. What we're going to do with the tape is essentially start to kind of aid the process of making it kind of feel like it's back in place. So what we would do, it's not actually doing that, we're just giving it the idea, and a lot of people get a lot of relief based on that. So what we'll do is we'll take the tape and essentially try to pull that tibialis posterior back onto the tibia. So put the tape down, and I'm just going to do exactly what I said. I'm going to pull it back, lay it down, and put that tape on. So essentially we're trying to push that tibialis posterior back onto the tibia. It's a very effective treatment. It doesn't actually heal the tissue, but it may get someone a little bit out of pain so we can kind of keep progressing forward. So shin splint, worst case scenario is a stress fracture. It's a tibialis posterior muscle. The main purpose here in treatment is to figure out why and then correct the why through some of these methods. Dr. Justin, Strive to Move. We'll talk to you soon.